I got this. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da.
On today's integrated rhythm, where two swing dancing besties navigate the race and social justice and a myriad of things in the world of Afrocentric jazz dancing. We're here with Chisomo and Bobby and Joey OTENG.
Joey OTENG is an amazing social justice educator, blogger, photographer, an all-round incredible human. He's studying law at the Moritz School of Law at Ohio State University. This guy is absolutely amazing. Tune in.
Integrated rhythm with Chisomo and Bobby.
We are here with Joey OTENG.
Yeah.
We're very excited to have him. You've probably seen his designs somewhere because a lot of us in the swing dance community share those on social media, his social justice designs, and they're fantastic.
Yeah, amazing infographics. And he has a compendium, a growing compendium of resources. When he came to Baldwin Wallace University to talk about social justice issues with the faculty there, at that point in time, I believe there were over 50, 60. And then now, how many are there?
I don't know. I think there's I think I'm just past like 80, 82 at this
Yeah.
point. Yeah, too many.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was like 50 or 60 at that point, and that was just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it had been like there were like 40 a couple weeks before that, and I was like, how are you as a person in law school and someone who's running social justice workshops and like existing as a human being, also churning out all of these infographics? Because before May, there weren't any, right? Like you had done,
none at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So, also, Bobby, we didn't introduce ourselves. So today we're here with Bobby White, swing dancer extraordinaire,
and Chisomo Soleimani.
Yay! We're so excited to have Joey. So we're like, Joey, tell us everything about your life. Tell us. So we wanted, speaking of social justice education, we wanted to chat with you a little bit about what that's been like. And seeing as we're in 2020, the year of, as my friend says, making lemonade.
And margaritas.
Yeah, margarita, exactly. We're making margaritas out of some rotten lemons. You started to make these infographics and you've kind of been blowing up on social media, et cetera. Could you give us a little summary of your life experience?
Yeah. What is there to know about me? Do you want me to focus just on the social media engagement and the social justice education, or like my background?
I would love for you to share your story. Tell us about you. Yeah.
Good question. Wow. So, I'm Joey. I use he, him pronouns. I am a second-year law student at the Ohio State University Moritz College of Law. Law school has been an adventure. So much to say about it, but let's avoid it. I was born in Centerville, Virginia, so Northern Virginia, back in the 90s, that was a time. Back when you can get 4 for 1 like candy at the grocery store. That's how I know that times have changed. Because now it's like 2 for 1 and it's not as fun. Cheetos asteroids were a thing. I just found some at Target the other day, which has been phenomenal. Spent most of my time in the suburbs of Cincinnati. Did college at the University of Vermont in religion and biology. Should be in medical school. Disappointment to my parents. I did a master's in education at Kent State University in higher ed and college student affairs because I loved college so much. I never wanted to leave. I worked at Otterbein University for a couple of years doing orientation and first year experience. And then now I'm in law school. So outside of school, which is way too much school, it's been photography, which I've been doing for about 6 years, blogging I've been doing for 10 years, and then social justice education about 5 or 6 years doing that. So for me, it's really been, a transformative experience. This past summer, I took it upon myself to put out some content. I was like, how do I get people to be where they need to be when it comes to having meaningful conversations and taking action when it comes to anti-racism and racial justice. It seemed like I was having a conversation and then other people weren't quite there or didn't have the language to be able to engage in a meaningful way. So I think for me, it was, how do I approach this with kindness and compassion and empathy to give people the language that they need to talk, to take action, to discuss, to dismantle whatever they need. It's like, how do I learn best? It's visual, it's videos, it's worksheets instead of I'm going to lecture you. I think it's been fascinating to see how there's been this massive output specifically with infographics. So it's like graphic design is saving the world, apparently. Every single day on Instagram, it's new words and aesthetically pleasing fonts and little quick videos to get people to be where they need to be. Yeah.
Well, by the way, I've been so impressed with your infographics, especially because something that I love so much that you do is you don't oversimplify the information. Like I've seen some infographics and stuff where, and I can understand the urge, right, to be like punchy, to like make sure people read it, and so you put it down into a few words and say like, this is the answer. And I really appreciate it that you like each infographic has like a book's worth of material if you kind of think about it and roll over it, and like how you again, like you don't simplify it, and I really appreciate that's been so helpful in my education.
Yeah, I feel like there's an understanding that a specific infographic is a part of a bigger picture. And so people recognize that while this is information, it's a snapshot, and I need to research what's within this and look beyond it as well.
Yes.
So yeah, that is a specific skill. Yeah, sorry, I'm having a fly moment, I guess, and so we don't need to get into any of that. But yeah, if you saw a fly, for those of you who are just listening to us, ignore what I just said. So
yeah, if you're listening to us on the podcast, you can check out the video, and I highly recommend it because Joey has like one of the most pleasing smiles in the world. You just get to bask in that glow, and I highly recommend it. Some of the things I in going through your infographics, some of the things that like really struck me, or I'll just throw out there because I found them really striking for my personal experience. The moving sidewalk to anti-racism, where you show this graphic of a moving sidewalk and how like the fight against anti-racism is walking the other way on the moving sidewalk, and that was just like a beautiful image.
I loved it. Yeah. I read Dr. Beverly Tatum's Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the School Cafeteria, which is, I think it's phenomenal. When I was in grad school, I studied college student affairs, and we spent some time on multiculturalism and identity development. So really thinking about how are students developing through their college experience on a wide variety of identities. So in terms of race, gender expression, sexuality, religion, ability. And so she zooms in on racial identity development. So the ways that Black students develop versus how white students and other students of color, ethnic minorities develop. And so she talks about the moving sidewalk in it. That was the first time I ever heard it. And I was like, this is absolutely brilliant because it makes so much sense. I think we often get caught in this sense of complacency. I think for me, I've come to the conclusion that we can either be complicit, complacent, or we can be courageous. And courageous is the only option that makes sense because the other two like take us to that same place of racism. If we're not being actively anti-racist, we're not doing the work that we need to.
Yeah. And that idea, complicit, complacent, courageous, I feel like that courage has to be renewed every day. Right. And so otherwise, if we exist in a space of complacency, that is a static space, whereas like courageousness, being courageous has to be continually, that commitment has to be continually renewed, and honestly, in this work can be really exhausting. So
Definitely.
Yeah. How, I would like to hear a little bit about like managing that, and then also any thoughts that you have about this year in particular. As we mentioned, I know No.
Woo!
Yeah, but I mean, as you said, you wanted to provide a way for people to grow in their literacy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know something you talk a lot about is like racial literacy, and then even like
Yeah.
social justice literacy. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's language associated with what we're doing,
Yeah.
and they're phenomena that people experience every day. And
Yes.
quite frankly, I feel like a lot of people are get into trouble because they're
Mm-hmm.
not aware of the role that they're playing in society without
Yep.
realizing it.
Absolutely.
And so, so anyway, so I'd love to hear a little bit about this year, and then also about you and how you kind of disrupt some of these like oppressive things for yourself. You know, we
Yeah.
want to have a moment of like recognizing the hard things, but then also celebrating with you. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, this year has been nothing short of an adventure. I think of my life, this is so ridiculous, but I think of my life as a TV show that gets renewed every season. So I'm in season 27.
Yeah.
The plot twists of this year keep coming. The side characters have been unexpected. I don't know, I even know what the plot line is at this point, but season 27 has been the most dramatic season ever. I just watched The Bachelorette yesterday, which was a mistake, but here we are. Yeah, 2020 has been, I don't know, I'm thinking about, was it 2017 that we really anthropomorphized? Morphosized? Anthropomorphized? Whatever. We made it human. That was the year that we were like, this is terrible. We blamed everything on 2017. How could this year be the way that it was? And then we have 2020, the year that said, yeah, what more could we do? What more could happen? Every single day. I'm honestly like, this is a joke. The writers of this season need to stop. Like, give us a break. Let us breathe. Too many plot lines. Like, give us the season finale because we cannot handle any more of this. The year started off. I remember I always do like resolutions or aspirations, as I call them. And I think for me, I wanted to spend more time on being present and being with people and witness. I think my word for the year has been witness. And I think about, I don't know, actively choosing to be with people and like people who celebrate me and each other and getting to know one another. That has been such like a positive, affirmative thing to do and like let go of who are disinterested and disengaged. And then the pandemic hit. I will never forget. I was on spring break. And so I was at the law library because I was like, I'm not going anywhere. I don't have time. I got stuff to do. And so I was with my friends and we're studying and we are listening to our 90s playlist. It is Backstreet Boys, Mark Morrison, Boys to Men in the law school, and get this email that, yeah, you have another week of spring break. I was like, I'll take it. Things that never happened. I was like,
studying.
maybe I will. I don't know. Maybe I will go somewhere. And so I was like, I'm not going anywhere. It was the Wednesday of that second week. I was at the library. I volunteered with the Columbus Public Library doing after-school homework help. So helping third graders do multiplication, which apparently I was not very good at. I used to be really good at it. And I'm like, people are counting on their fingers. I was like, wow, I need to call my dad because as an immigrant kid, he would make me sit in the kitchen and sit with me and do this homework and like sine, cosine, tangent.
Yes.
Until I would cry, to be quite honest, until I would cry. And then I'm like, I just want to leave. I'm trying to watch Smallville and I should not be watching the show because it's way too old for me. And then we got the call of everyone has to leave right now. You must go home. We are on lockdown. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is going on? And so it was almost like a movie. I remember my dad was like, go to the store, get what you need for like a week or two, and then go home. I remember going to Target, and there are people physically running. People are pushing each other, fighting over bread. I am a snob when it comes to toilet paper. So I was like, I need my 4-ply toilet paper. Like that's a necessity for me in life. And it is gone. It felt like a movie. I was like, if I'm being punked, I hope I get paid for this. But it was the wildest thing I think I've ever experienced. It was like 9/11. That's how I think about it. Like I will remember where I was, how I felt, and how like eerie it was. so the pandemic started, and there I was just hanging out at home, and slowly but surely it set in more and more where, yeah, we're not going back to school. We were on Zoom from then on. Summer came, and I don't know, it was just like, what is going to be different? We can't go anywhere. I can't see people I care about. I was like, can I go see my dad in Cincinnati? And my dad and two of my older brothers are all ER doctors. So they were seeing patients who had coronavirus. So for me, it was like, are my family members going to be okay? It has been a time. And then you add this fight for racial justice with this resurgence because the police could not kill people for like 2 weeks. We couldn't handle it. We couldn't stop it. We enjoy it too much. And then there's the climate and climate change and wildfires and politics. And we got Joe Biden as our de facto decision of who we have to vote for, and so much. So, what a year. What a year. I feel like there's like a collective exhaustion and this like, there's no time to mourn and to rest. I think about Chadwick Boseman. His passing was devastating for me as a Black person. And he was the reason I grew out my hair and have my little hair crown now. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I remember where I was at the park taking pictures and then just sat down in the park and cried because what more could happen at this point? And that's what I think about this year.
I kind of feel like this year, as you were describing things, it made me think this year is like a season of a Shonda Rhimes TV show. So it's like Grey's Anatomy or How to Get Away with Murder or Scandal.
All at once.
Right? It's like you have the legal side, you have the medical emergency side, you have the presidential side. Like it's just like all of those three. So so it's not like a Shonda Rhimes TV show. It's like all of them.
I'm like, you can let us breathe, Shonda. We need some time.
Right? Exactly. Because that's how I feel watching them. I'm like, oh, I just need to watch another episode, but I need to get through the season. I can't. Yeah, no, it's been hectic. Just one quick story, and then Bobby, I'd love to hear your thoughts and questions as well. You were talking about your moment with your dad. I had a similar moment or similar moments with my mom. And one of my particularly favorite moments was like I was behind. Like I do things slowly. The way my friend, I operate very slowly. Like I'm aware of time, but I take my time, like I'm one of those people. And so when I was in my early educational experiences, I didn't get through work very quickly. In math, I was a little bit behind. So my mom was like, okay, we're going to fix this. And so we're going to do times tables at home. And then times tables somehow turned into algebra. And so I was 10 years old. I mean, this was the summer of like the fifth grade, like going into fifth grade. And my mom is like, okay, Chisomo, this is Pythagoras' theorem. So we're going to talk about the Pythagorean theorem right now. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. It's emblazoned in my mind. As a 10-year-old, I was like, Mom, we're doing times tables at school.
Yes.
And she was like, okay, so these letters. She didn't care. She was unfazed. So I also would cry, but then it didn't really matter. But
it was traumatic, but then also really useful because when I got to 8th grade algebra, I already knew 3x is equal to 5, x is equal to 5. And now I don't use math at all. So it's wonderful.
Exactly. That's similar situation. So Joey and I, here's the thing about the pandemic is that like Joey and I have never met, but we've now like sat on a panel.
That's true.
We've sat on a panel together. We've hung out. We have, he participated in a community conversation I did. He came to Baldwin Wallace University and taught for my class. So like, I feel like Joey's like an old friend, but because of the pandemic,
because of the pandemic, old friends can be made really quickly.
Definitely.
Exactly. Exactly. Never
Good
met.
time.
But one of the things we found is that we have a lot of parallel situations.
Yes.
So math, solidarity. I personally, I shouldn't say this because I don't want to discourage anyone who looks like me from doing math. You can do it. Just so you know, you can do it.
It's
The
true.
next words I'm going to say, not great, but what I'm saying right now is great. Next couple words. I'm terrible at math. I hate it. It's horrible. I'm not a math professor. There
Nope.
is math in my work, but simple math and I are not friends. We're not. I tell my
Mhm.
students I'm bad at two things: simple math and separating tiny sheets of paper. Like, you know, when you have to like separate to pass them out.
Knuckle
Like,
knuckle
The,
message.
the listing or is that
Oh
not doing it
no,
anymore?
that is.
Probably should- yeah.
you should
Whew.
see me at the grocery store, like with those bags. I'm
Oh,
like
that's true. I need to do
sitting
that.
there
Oh,
for a
Oh, the
minute.
garbage bag
you
method.
have a
You're
little
shaking that
sponge in
out.
a Tupperware that you keep with you.
Oh man.
Like, help me. But yeah. So Bobby,
Well, yeah. Well, so both of you seem to be pretty well steeped in some academia, and I would love to hear your thoughts on. So, Joey, we in the swing scene.
Mm.
I think it's, correct me if I'm wrong in any of this, Chisomo, but
Mhm.
we are predominantly a white educated space who's gone through a
Mm.
lot of, I think most, a very pretty highly educated white space. And I feel like that has affected the way that the dance is approached, the way that it's taught,
Mm.
all these things. And of course, we're talking about jazz dance, which is a Black American art form.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on like pitfalls of that kind of academia teaching versus
Mhm.
like what are some things that are going on now to help change that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think about, I mean, white supremacy, it comes to mind. I'm like, oh, here we go. I really think about, yeah, like who gets to teach and be taught? Where does our pedagogy come from? What's our lineage of our education? I was just talking about in my critical lawyering class this week that I've only had two professors of color in my entire life. It was my senior year of college. I had my first black professor, and how revolutionary that experience was. And then I taught a couple classes when I worked at Audubon University, and my students were like, "Wait, what is this? Like, you're teaching this class?" And I was like, "How am I qualified to be here?" But there I was, and I think about in any sense, any aspect, any community, when that has been where we're coming from, how that impacts the way that we approach the work or even talk about the work. I know for me, I try to avoid academic language as much as possible. It's so fascinating to be able to pivot. My big thing is if people can understand you in smaller words, more manageable words, use them. There's no point unless it's like I don't know, a built-in audience that knows the vernacular. Let's break it down because if people can't understand you, that's not effective communication. Um, that is like my entire struggle with the legal profession. It is sometimes they want us to dance in the heavens and live in the ivory tower, and then sometimes they want us to be Rapunzel and let down our hair and just use regular people words. And I'm like, who was my audience? Is it a judge or is it the plaintiff? I don't know. And so for me, it is. I struggle. I think even as a person, I love words. When I was a kid, I used to read the dictionary, which is so odd, but I would just like, I thought it was so fun. And I lost my sixth grade spelling bee and I'll never forget it. Restaurant, still can't spell it. Yeah. And so for me, it is how are we making the things that we're talking about, the things that we care about, the things that we're passionate about, accessible to other people. And if people don't know, are we giving them an opportunity to learn in a way that's kind and gracious and welcoming instead of exclusive? Or I think about like the access to social capital or shaming. It's not, how could you not know? Or how have you never seen this movie? Or you've never done this? It is, oh, yeah, you don't know this? Great. Let me tell you a little bit about this. Or this is where I learned about it. I'd love to share this resource with you instead. It is, or it's like universal design where I'm going to treat it as if you know nothing and give you all the information you need all at once so you don't have to ask questions.
I love the UDL shout out, by the way. University or Universal Design for Learning. For those, it's if you are a pedagogy scholar, your heart was just warmed in that moment. And so,
Good time. Yeah,
yeah,
I love it.
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I myself I've always loved literature, and I started to really fight back and be annoyed at, the four-letter that. Okay, so I took the GRE, and for the
Mm,
GRE, you have to
Oh, yeah.
learn
Yeah,
all
I love
those
this.
Victorian era literary words that you've only seen used in Victorian literature,
yes.
and you're expected to have your intelligence judged on
Hmm.
your ability to remember what all those words mean. And I just remember being furious. I was so furious studying for this exam, because I was like, you are asking me to do a task which is like pointless to whether
Yes.
or not I can like move people with words.
Yes.
Yeah,
I was entering a creative writing program, which I got into, so I
yeah.
did okay. And hilariously, I did much better on the math than the verbal.
Really? That's fascinating.
I was
Because
fuming. I
I
was
would
so
not
angry.
be.
Yeah, it's like let's test your Latin ability, your understanding of words, deconstruction of
Yes.
words. And so like I hear you, Joey. I love words. I
Yeah.
I remember studying for the GRE, memorizing all of that word list because
Hmm.
I mean, in terms of assessments, come on, like let's be serious. Like assessments, like when you were in education, you ask the
Yeah.
question, is what am I assessing actually giving me information about what I want to get outcomes for?
Hmm.
So that assessment is like questionable, but I loved like learning the different words and thinking about the roots of
Yeah.
words and being
Yes.
a nerd about the words.
Oh
Like I
yeah,
love that
etymology is
process.
amazing.
Yeah, I love it. Yes,
Yeah.
but the functional ramifications of passing or not passing the GRE, especially
Yes.
as it's been, was not great.
Whew. That's
So yeah,
awesome. I love
but but I loved what you were saying about shame through the learning process
that.
and asking yourself the question of how do you manage that moment when your knowledge in something is deeper than somebody else's. And
Yeah.
so um
Yeah.
I thought that was really brilliant because I think interpersonally we run into that all the time, right? Like
Yes. All
if
the
we're in
time.
a group, if we're having a conversation and you don't know, like oftentimes like we've been socialized to just not say anything,
Yes.
or not engage.
Yeah.
And how beautiful would it be if we were more accepting of different ways of knowing and learning and
Yeah.
growing? Bobby, you look like you wanted to say something.
I do, but actually it'll be perfect time to come in after the break. So we're going to take a quick break.
Yes.
We'll be right back.
Sounds great.
Hello, we here at Integrated Rhythm obviously love for you to can put money into the Black business economy, help support Black businesses. And it just so happens we are having a conversation today with a Black businessman. That's right, Joey OTENG. You can help donate to him to help, first off, keep his infographics and social justice work coming. That stuff he does for free to send out there to the world, but you can help keep it afloat. Another thing you can do is you can hire him for your social justice needs. He has done panels. He has done conversations. He's done this podcast. You know what an incredible speaker he is. So you can have that all to yourselves if you are looking for someone in that line of work. Chisomo, how might one go about donating to the man Joey?
You could donate or jonate to Joey at Venmo or PayPal. So his Venmo is the following: Joteng, spelt JOTENG. His PayPal is joteng614@gmail or JOTENG614@gmail.com. Lastly, to see all of these things and see his great photography, you could also hire him as a photographer, y'all. Go to Instagram. His Instagram is Dr. Joteng II or DRJOTENGII, all lowercase.
Donate. Hey everybody, this is Bobby White from Integrated Rhythm. We're here to ask you to please consider donating to the podcast. You can do so by going to patreon.com/integrated rhythm. You can do so by Venmoing at Bobby Swungover. And make sure to put a little IR in the note so we make sure it goes to the right people. You can also do so by PayPaling at BobbyWhite3. And once again, putting a little IR in the window there. Doing so will help us keep this podcast going, and we love doing it, and we hope you love it too. If you can't afford to donate at this time because times are rough, we totally understand. We don't want you to put yourselves out. We want you to keep enjoying the podcast for free. However, if you have a little bit of pocket change in your pocket, we would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thanks and have a great day.
Actually, I'm going to share something deeply personal and might make my mother uncomfortable. So I apologize, gentlemen. I needed to get some underwear, and I was able to find some flesh tone underwear for the first time in my entire life a couple weeks ago, because I ended up patronizing a Black-owned business. And so,
That's really cool.
isn't
You
that
don't have to patronize them, Chisomo. They're a business just like any other business.
I was a patron of them. I'm sorry.
No, you said the word right. My brain just somersaulted.
I didn't know. But yeah, but it was really cool. And so you think about it. I got flesh tone undies. So
that's awesome. It's a big deal though. I feel that I bought flesh colored bandages at Target. I remember I got some last year and I still have them in my backpack, and I cried. I was at Target just crying. I was like, this is so cool, because I feel like back when I was a kid, the peach crayon still used to be called flesh. And so that was like a strong communication of your skin is not what skin is supposed to be. So I don't know, we've come a long way and people are like, it's not a big deal, but bandages are supposed to match your skin and hide.
It's a huge deal. I can only imagine what a huge deal it is. I told Chisomo this story. At one point, I went into a drugstore, and it was after I was reading, I think, Whistling Vivaldi, and I just decided, like, hey, what is this drugstore trying to tell me? And I went in, and every single picture on every single bandage or Band-Aid or here's this knee brace thing. Every single picture was a white-skinned person. And I was like, oh, I never noticed before that this drugstore is telling me that, like, normal equals white.
Yeah.
Bobby, I love that question. You walked in and you said, what is this store? What are they trying to tell me? What is my world trying to tell me? I think that that's a really great point of reflection. Yeah.
And like I know that on video games now, they're making an effort to, like, make sure that the characters you can choose have different skin tones and stuff like that. And I'm like, friends of ours are so excited about it, and that's really awakening for me, who again wasn't aware of this kind of situation. And now to see how happy it makes my friends and stuff is just really impactful.
Yeah, so bringing it back to underwear, I'm sorry, but I was in the Victoria's Secret. I was in the Victoria's Secret I guess it was like about 10 years ago now, 12 years ago. And I was with my best friend, and she's white. And so we were in Victoria's Secret, and I was looking for different underwear, and I saw the word nude, and it was like the selection of like women's underwear that was nude. And I literally, I think she was embarrassed, because why, maybe, whatever. But I was like, this is not my nude. I was like, this is not my nude. This is not my nude. Like, I just was yelling in Victoria's Secret. And Amanda was kind of like, okay. I'm like, but it's not. I'm like, it's not. So
you know how you imagine that some places have their telephone complaint people obviously have a script for different things. I wonder if Victoria's Secret had a script for, like, someone is screaming about how you don't have their skin color and how they're supposed to.
Yeah. So, but you're right. It speaks volumes, Joey. So, but Bobby, I believe you had some questions for us.
Yeah. All right. So Joey, we in the scene, in the swing dance scene, again, Chisomo, correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the feeling that we are a predominantly more liberal-oriented white space.
Mm.
And so we as a scene are trying to, we're trying to make spaces more welcoming for people of color. We're trying to make spaces themselves more Black spaces in and of themselves.
Mm.
And we're trying to, correct for, the mistakes of the past and that sort of thing. And a lot of your infographics do have, you have some that are geared specifically towards allyship and how allyship can go awry.
Yeah.
Or what are more productive allyship purposes? What are some less productive allyship things?
Absolutely.
And I wouldn't mind if you would love to maybe give some advice to that for our listeners.
Yeah, I think you said some really significant things where um, we always have these buzzwords, right? Like inclusion is the big one right now. Like we got to include people. You're welcome here, and I think about the spectrum of um, inclusion, engagement, celebration, right? Like it's one thing to tolerate people. I think that's like it's a coded word. Be like, oh, I tolerate you. Like you can exist as you are.
That does not sound very good when you say it that
Yeah,
way, does it?
yeah. Or I accept everybody, or I'm open. People love to say they're open, and I'm like, so you can entertain the idea that I exist. Wonderful. I'm glad. Good for you. I exist whether you believe it or not. People, it's a weird thing to say, and then people will say, yeah, like you're included. We want you to be part of us. And I think that's like where a lot of people have tried to move to is, yeah, you can fit here. But I also think about like what does it look like to move past inclusion versus like welcoming, right? Like I want you here. Like Bobby, I would love for you to come to my birthday party instead of you can come if you want. I think inclusion says like you can come if you want versus I specifically want you to come to my birthday party. And then celebration. The birthday party is actually for you, Bobby. We're going to celebrate you at this birthday party. It's everyone's birthday today, right? So, like, I know you like swing. I know you like creative writing. It's going to be a jazz murder mystery. That's what's going to happen at your birthday party, right? Like,
This is awesome.
specifically, specifically catered to you, right? And I think that's what we really want. And we have the ability to honor people as they are and do all those things in our spaces instead of I'm gonna see if you can fit into the space that's already been created. Sometimes I wonder if we have to like demolish spaces. I think there's some institutions that cannot be redeemed and are too far gone, and like maybe our constitution might need to go. But there's so many things. But I think about prison abolition or police reform, where okay, there's no matter of reform because it's so central, like violence against and anti-blackness is so central to this institution that it cannot be reformed. Versus, okay, we have our social space where we've been historically not as welcoming or inclusive or celebratory as we wanted to, but we can change that. We can change the way that we talk, the activities that we do, who we invite, the music we listen to, the way that we discuss, the way that we engage. There's so many things that we can do. And so there's so much opportunity there. And I love this idea of how do we move forward together? How do we just ask people what they need and then meet their needs? I think so often it is we're trying to anticipate and wonder and question, but we can ask people or we can give people the power. If you were going to design this space for you, what would you want? What would you need? How could we be supportive instead of we've had this established space for white folks and we want y'all to be part of us. So come and join us. We're going to make alterations. But what if we need to craft a new space altogether, right? We are, instead of a reno, I'm thinking about HGTV, the Property Brothers. I still love them. We're building a brand new build. We're going to build our dream house, our dream community, our dream space all together. What does that look like for all of us to have a say in doing that?
Man, that's fantastic. And it reminded me of the first, a few years ago, there's a concept that a lot of us were working for in the scene, which is, how do we, again, welcome people of color and blackness itself into the swingdance scene.
Yes.
And that was step one. And not a lot of people mention step two. Step two, let go of the control of the end result. And like when someone finally mentioned step 2 and brought that to light, that was like, oh,
Yeah.
right. Like, like I myself was thinking only as far as step 1 and didn't
Yes.
realize how important that step 2 was. And it was a little scary subconsciously at the very beginning, right? The first time I heard that, it was like, oh, wait, this thing that I love, to let control of that, right?
Yeah.
But then as soon as it dawned on, as soon as my conscious caught up with that subconscious fear, it was like, oh, wait, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let go of that control.
Yes. I think that's one of the tenets of white supremacy is control and power hoarding, right? Like I think
Absolutely.
we keep calling for like social change and all these companies and organizations and communities where yes, we're all about it. Black Lives Matter. We said it. We proclaimed it. Whether we were socially pressured into doing it, who knows? We'll take it. But then there is this, I don't know, I think about like hand holding where white folks are often holding hands of like with white supremacy. Like this is how we've been socialized, how we've been raised. But then also I've learned better. So I'm holding hands with like multiculturalism and community. And so I'm holding hands, but I'm stuck with both. You can't have both, right? I think there's this fear of like, if I let go, am I going to be disengaged? Am I going to lose social power, privilege, connection? I don't want to lose my status, but I do want to like be better and change. But like you have to let go, and once you let go, there's nothing to be afraid of because you're gonna get caught. Like
Yeah.
you're going to build a new community. You're gonna be like tell the truth. You're gonna have authenticity, love, compassion, like all these things that we all want but you have to let go. And I think the letting go is what terrifies people. You can't, I don't know, like you can't have both where we're making space for people, but we also don't want to change at all, right? Like you can't just like, I don't know, it's like making little modifications when maybe you got to knock the house down. It's going to be a brand new house. It's going to take a little bit of building, but it's going to be better at the end. Are we prepared to go to the end or not? Because if not, we shouldn't do the work to begin with.
Yeah. And, I mentioned earlier how, we as the scene are trying to come to terms with welcoming people of color and just making sure it's welcoming for Black people. And then, it was brought up. Also, we need to make the space itself more Black. Like we don't want it to be a white space that's welcoming the Black people when it was originally a Black space to begin with, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that we're also like coming to terms with and how that will look in the future.
It is, I think about allyship and what does it mean to be an ally, where it's not this self-proclaimed title. It is like a gift bestowed upon you. It is you've shown up for me in this dynamic way, and I get to tell you, hey, you are an ally to me. You've shown up in the ways I needed you to. Allyship to me is self-defeating, and I think this is where people get caught up, where we think of combating racism as empathy for Black folks. Like, this is so sad. The ways that Black folks are being murdered is really terrible. I feel bad for you. Oh my goodness. And I'm keeping you at an arm's length away. I see how terrible that is. I don't want it to happen to me. And so I'm going to do my part. I donate, I go to a protest, but I get to retreat and return to the safety of whiteness, white culture, the suburbs, Whole Foods, whatever it is, wherever you feel comfortable. But there's no retreat from the way that white supremacy has treated Blackness. I always have to correct people where they'll talk about the Black experience as like awful and intrinsically like harmful. And I'm like, no, anti-Black racism has actors. We need to name them. Like, there's no inherent value to race, but people are, because of how they perceive themselves and other people, are perpetrating violence and harm against other people. We have to name that's an active act. It's not inherent to Blackness. And so allyship in its truest form is self-defeating. It is using your positionality to dismantle your position, right? Like the only reason you have this positionality, this privilege, this power to make social change is because you've been placed there. So the goal is to dismantle that positionality. It is, I've been placed on a tower. It's not lifting someone else up on their own tower. It's, I'm knocking down my tower so it can be fair and tell the truth. And that's scary for people. I think that's really terrifying. It's for your own benefit. I think it's for your own soul. It's not saving me. It is saving yourself because you've been lied to your entire life, right? About like the way the world is supposed to work or who we've been and who we are now, the cognitive dissonance in our country around race and racism is absolutely terrifying, and it's fascinating at the same time, where how can we pretend to be a nation of freedom, liberty, and justice, but then we have not provided these opportunities for so many people to be at their best, right? Tell the truth, make social change, own our own BS, hold people we love accountable, and let's move forward, because the end result is going to be for the benefit of all of us. I think racism has nothing to do with people of color. It is an issue for white folks to solve. Sexism has nothing to do with women. It's for men to solve. We benefit from the oppression of women, plain and simple, right? So when we think of it that way, the responsibility is on us instead of I can pick and choose when I'm going to engage. It's about you, and it won't change because it's about you. We're waiting for you. It's not me. It's your job.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot. I just ranted, but that's,
No, it's all good. It was
Not
a mic drop.
apologize.
It was a mic drop moment. Like I wanted to remove my microphone and just walk away. But yeah, no, it's really important. And honestly, I've been thinking a lot about my own personal privilege. And like when you think about if we're talking about the socially constructed concept of race in the United States, I'm kind of like one of the bottom rungs, right? Being with the intersection of being a Black woman.
Yes.
There's a lot of really great information out there about like healthcare, romance and dating, and like every arena. Like I kind like as a Black woman, we're like it's not so great. Anyway, but on the flip side, I have to own the privilege that I do have, which is like, especially within the academic arena, like I have somehow, as a young woman with a master's degree, done the impossible and achieved tenure at the early age of 32, which is kind of unheard of. And so, yeah. And so there are like lots of privileges that happen that have been bestowed on me. And so and also like, as we were talking about, the way that I speak often affords me some privilege, and here and in Zambia. And so there's this question that I have for myself, which is how can I spend the social capital that I have to improve the lives of the people around me. And I think that sometimes that there is external and internal work that we need to do.
Absolutely.
And I say that as a Black woman so that people, that the majority of the audiences that I would speak to, which are usually privileged individuals, recognize that this is something that if you have some privilege, as Toni Morrison said, if you have some privilege, if you have some power, you need to empower somebody else. You have to give up what you have to empower somebody else. It is self-defeating, but it is work that we need to do. So yeah,
it is. I resonate with that. It feels like it's like cotton candy in water. It is. I'm giving something up and it's going to disappear. It's like the raccoon with the cotton candy in the water, but you're also not losing anything. Like you're going to dismantle your positionality, but then you aren't losing anything. I always think about when we talk about diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice, where people think they're going to lose. I'm like, you only have things to gain. You're not going to lose your rights or your privilege. You've always had them. So now we're going to give other people what you've always had. You're always included. It's fascinating to me. It's like it feels like you're giving up something in the moment, but you really also aren't. So it's challenging. How do you balance your positionality and your privilege? Like I think about my history and background, and it's funny because the ways that, I don't know, oppression can be projected onto you. This false narrative of it sometimes, where like me specifically talking about class privilege, like I talk about anti-Blackness and racism and xenophobia all the time, and I'm also like, okay, you're like the son of a one percenter, like that. You are in professional school. That is not a normal experience. That is a rarity. That's, I don't know. Like if I ever need anything, I just call my parents. That is not a regular experience. most Americans are one paycheck away, one accident away from poverty, and that is not my life story. But then with my Blackness, people project that onto me. So it is. I did a workshop a couple weeks ago where one of the guests was like, "What are your qualifications? Did you finish high school?" And I was like, "Oh,
What?
there's some. Here we go. This is fun." And I was like,
Oh,
"Oh, well, yeah, I finished high school, and here's my pedigree if that helps you. But also, I grew up on a golf course. Like my life is actually probably more similar than yours than you think." Um, and they're so taken aback. It's like I just didn't think that was a possibility. I'm like, well, you made lots of assumptions that were ridiculous, but also I'm like, use your context clues. Like, I had an orthodontist. Like that's why I look like, you know what I mean? Or like my clothing, or like my Zoom background is like this is my photography. So pay attention, and we also have to operate out of our place of privilege just as much as we operate out of marginalization. It's both.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah. I agree. It is really interesting, the assumptions that people
Oh
place
yeah.
on you. And this is, I think if there's anything that I try to tell people that are like grappling with this and experience
Hmm.
shame with
Hmm.
this is that there's nothing wrong with asking questions, and I'm
Yeah.
really embracing Maya Angelou's "if you know better, then we
Yes.
after when we know better, we do better." Like that's that we are none of us have arrived. All of us have so much more to do in terms of growing and developing, and so asking questions versus like assuming and telling people about their
Hmm.
existence. Like
Yeah.
I have some really close friends, and I think it's a really important exercise to do at every level of interaction, every level of
Hmm.
closeness, right? Like what happens with like husbands and wives after
Hmm.
years, like people will argue, or like spouses, I should say. I apologize, friends. What happens with like spouses after many years, like, or like you'll hear the phrase like, "Do you even know me?" Like, because people stop asking questions and they make
Hmm.
assumptions, and we need to continually ask questions of one another,
Yeah.
about one another, to inform our reality. Like that idea of courage that you brought up earlier,
It's
that
true.
like daily renewal of courage is really important. And I think courage also states that I knew some things yesterday, but the things I knew
Hmm.
yesterday may not be the same today.
Mm.
So what can I do to further my knowledge, recognizing that that knowledge doesn't necessarily make me better than anybody else, but
Mhm.
it equips me to be a better contributor to my society. Um, yeah,
Wow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think there's so many, like every single person we meet, we craft this intricate story, right? Like if I'm in season 27 of my life and my full cast of characters, we got A-list actors in my life. Every single other person also has uh as complex a life, right? And I think there's a lifetime of questions that we could ask. I don't know. I think for me, like, I don't know, love is an endless list of questions. Like if I'm in love, oh
Mm,
yeah, that is it's wonder and curiosity for a lifetime. I think that's what it looks like. And we can just let people tell us who they are instead of making assumptions. The story that whatever season they're on right now is good. It keeps getting renewed. We can watch the story. It's enough. We don't have to make the assumptions. And then also when people are telling us who they are, we can just believe them to be true, right? Like most people are not going to lie about what do they have to gain. Our lives are complicated and complex and fun and quirky and weird enough to not have to like make it more exciting. And so what do we lose by letting people tell us their truths and tell us who they are, and then believing them to be true?
right, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
absolutely. But I love your analogies, Joey, and I love your use of
Thank you.
analogies.
Thank you.
Hmm.
And they're so good. And like it's yeah, they're also again like your infograms. They have integrity to them. Like it's easy sometimes to make an analogy that kind of doesn't fit quite right or is kind of weird. But man, I've just been really enjoying this
Thank
conversation.
you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. There's so much to be said about all of this. I really wonder where we go next. when it comes to, I don't know, our collective consciousness, the salvation of our American soul, whatever that is, or the soul of the U.S. Let me say. Um, I don't know. I have hope. I don't know. I think that's what I've like learned. Other than like the despair and wallow and collective mourning of 2020, it is like this abundant hope. I think people have we've learned so much about how the world is and how it could be. I think about, I don't know, in Columbus, all of a sudden we found money to house people who were experiencing homelessness, or we have an abundance of food, or we could, I don't know, give out medical resources. We can do free dentistry. And I'm like, oh, look at that. Look at that. All of this is a choice. Everything is a choice. The way that we're living, the way that we're treating one another, the way that we are existing together is a choice. And that is both a prison, but also like liberation, right? If we are the people causing our own imprisonment, if we don't do anything, we're going to stay there. Or if we're the people causing that imprisonment, we also have the key to let us out and be free, like be different. So I hope that after, I don't know, the election, pandemic, I don't know, I hope this remains at all levels of interaction, whether it be interpersonally with the people we are in community with, most proximally, with ourselves, our like self-kindness and self-grace, but then also institutionally where we can choose to be better and treat people in better ways, because we've learned that better is possible and better is a choice. Yeah.